This is the Mathin8r with another video to help you practice and prepare for the math portion of our standardized testing, the ACT and the SAT. On this video, I will be doing practice test number 8, no calculator, from the official College Board site for the SAT. And of course, with the SAT and the ACT, they're pretty much testing you on the same topic, same concept, same type of problems there. But with the SAT, there is a calculator section and a no calculator section. The no calculator section, you have 25 minutes to answer 20 questions. 1 through 15 are multiple choice, and 16 through 20 are free response that you have to grid in. Whereas with the ACT, it is 60 questions. You have 60 minutes, and you are allowed to use the calculator on the entire math portion of the ACT. And as always, I tell you one of the main strategies is make sure you carefully read the problem at least 2 times. I know you're pressed for time, but you don't want to mess yourself up by not being careful in reading the question, and then you misunderstand it and end up marking an incorrect answer because you did not take the time to read it carefully. And what I'll be doing, I'll just be reading each question one time and not just answering, not just solving that particular question, but kind of as much as possible getting into the type of question it is, because of course it's about the type of questions you'll see and not a specific question. So let's go ahead and get into this. In the equation above, what is the value of x? Now what we have here is a regular Algebra 1 linear equation, and a strategy I want to look at is for every x on the right side, if there's a corresponding x on the left side, we can go ahead and cross those out because they will sum to 0. So we can cross out that x and that x, that x, and that x. And from there, what we want to do is combine our like terms. So over on the left side, we still have 3x plus x, so that would be 4x. And then that 7 over there, we're going to add that 3 and that 2 to the 7. Of course, algebra, we know how to move our integers over, so that's going to be 4x equals 12, which means x is going to have to equal 3. The graph above shows the distance traveled, d, in feet by a product on a conveyor belt m minutes after the product is placed on the belt. Which of the following equations correctly relates d and m? So we're looking at a linear equation here. We're in the form talking about y equals mx plus b. All right, and we see that when x is 0, or also we got to see m is going to be on our x-axis, d is going to be our y-axis. Do not confuse this m right here with our m slope in our slope-intercept form, okay? All right. And we see when m is 0, d is 0. So we do not have a y-intercept, or our plus b is 0. So that is going to eliminate those 2 answer choices because their plus b is non-zero. Okay, now when it comes to graph, make sure you pay attention to the scale. Scale is very important. So in this one, for every block on our x-axis, every block is a unit of 1. And same thing vertically on our y-axis, every block is a unit of 1. So our scale is 1 to 1 there. All right, so now we want to see what is our slope, rise over run. So we see if we go to that point right there, we're coming up 2 and to the right 1. We have a rise of 2, a run of 1, which means our slope there is 2 over 1, or 2, which corresponds with A. D equals 2m. The formula below is often used by project managers to compute E, the estimated time to complete a job, where O is the shortest completion time, P is the longest completion time, and M is the most likely completion time. E equals O plus 4M plus P divided by 6. Which of the following correctly gives P in terms of E, O, and M? All right, so this is Algebra 1, a literal equation. We want to isolate that right there. We want to isolate that variable. All right, so that variable is in the numerator of a fraction. So the first thing we want to do is clear that fraction, multiplying both sides by 6. Clears that fraction, and we have 6e equals O plus 4m plus P. Now let's see if there's anything we can eliminate here. All right. Now, as we look at our right side, we have O plus 4M plus P. There's all addition. So, of course, doing our inverse operation, we're going to subtract. We're not multiplying anything by P, so that means when we get P by itself, there's not going to be any division. So, again, that's going to eliminate C and D. And now, is there anything else we can eliminate? Okay, we can also go ahead and eliminate B. All right, we have this P over here. We need to subtract away O and 4M, so that 6E is going to stay positive. So we're going to have, 6E, subtract that O away from the P, subtract that 4M away. And of course, with our reflexive property, we have P equals 6E minus O minus 4M A. All right, number 4. In the figure above, RT equals TU, what is the value of X? All right, I love geometry. Okay. And with this one, we have to understand triangles and sums of angles and other properties of angles. So we have right here, that is a straight angle. So that means 114 degrees plus that angle right there, that has to equal 180. So that means that angle is 66 degrees. Okay, and now 66 plus 31 plus whatever that is also has to equal 180. So we have 66 and 31 is 97. And 97 and 83 is 180. So that means that is an 83-degree angle. But we also have to understand that we have a vertical angle. Our vertical angle theorem, vertical angles are congruent. So that angle right there is also 83 degrees. Now we want to use the fact that it tells us RT equals TU. And since RT equals TU, that means these two angles are congruent. So we have 114 plus, we'll say Y. Both of those are Y since they're congruent. 114 plus 2Y equals 180. There's something else I could have used there. That means 66... 2y equals 66 degrees, so y equals 33 degrees. Now what I also could have used there is our exterior angle theorem, where it says that this exterior angle on that triangle equals the sum of these two angles, but I don't want to throw too much at this one problem here. All right, so now we know y equals 33 degrees. And we have, so in that triangle right there, in this triangle, we know we have an 83-degree angle. And we also have a 33-degree angle. That is 116 degrees. So angle X is supplementary with those two angles. So 116 plus what equals 180? And it's 116 plus 64. So our answer is C. The width of a rectangular dance floor is W feet. The length of the floor is 6 feet longer than its width. Which of the following expresses the perimeter in feet of the dance floor in terms of W? Okay, so this is our basic knowing the geometric formulas, pre-algebra type stuff. All right, so we see that width is W, and our length is equal to our width. It's 6 feet longer, so that is equal to the width plus 6. And we know that the perimeter is equal to 2L plus 2W. We want the perimeter in terms of W, so that is going to equal 2, and our length is our width plus 6 plus 2W, so that is 2W plus 12 plus 2w. And once we combine our like terms, 2w plus 2w, we have 4w plus 12. Which of the following consists of the y-coordinates of all the points that satisfy the system of inequalities above? All right, so we want y has to be greater than 2x minus 1 and 2x greater than 5. All right, we see we are talking about a system of equations, but we have to read the question carefully, saying, so we can understand how to go towards getting our answer, getting a solution here. So looking at this, what we can do here is use equal sign. We can change that to say y equals 2x minus 1 and say 2x equals 5. Then we can use substitution to say that y equals 5 minus 1, y equals 4. And then we go back to the fact we're talking about a greater than inequality, so y greater than 4. Now, real quick, I want to look at something here. Just do a quick sketch. If we were to graph 2x greater than 5, that is the vertical line, x greater than 5 halves. So we're talking about x greater than 5 halves. That's this region over here. And then if we were to graph y equals 2x minus 1, or graph y is greater than 2x minus 1, so we have a y-intercept of -1, a slope of 2, and we're talking about greater than, and that should be a dashed line. Up there. That means this point right here, their point of intersection, is 5 halves 4. And we want the y-coordinates of all points that satisfy this system. So then our y values cannot be less than 4, so we're talking about y greater than 4. What is the solution set of the equation above? All right, so we're going to end up here with a radical equation. And what I want to do first, let's go ahead, get that 4 over to the other side. So we're going to have, there we go, 2x plus 6 equals x minus 1. All right, subtracting that 4 from each side. Now, of course, solving for a radical equation, we need to square that radical, square that square root to get rid of it. And of course, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. And of course, when we square that square root, that just, hate to say this, cancels out the radical sign. So we have 2x plus 6 equals, and you must know how to do your binomial expansion, especially when we're talking about squaring a binomial. So that's x squared minus 2x plus 1. And anytime we're talking about radicals, we need to have all of our variables on one side, have it set equal to 0. So what we're going to have here is going to be x squared minus 2x, so minus 4x, plus 1 minus 6, so minus 5, equals 0. And then we need to factor that. That factors out to x minus 5, x plus 1 equals 0. Then once we set each of our factors equal to 0 and solve those linear equations, we get x equals 5 and x equals -1. Now, we also have to test these to make sure we don't have any superfluous solutions. If we substitute -1 in for x, we get -2 plus 6 is 4, so we end up with the square root of 4 plus 4 equals -1 plus 3. And we end up square root of 4, so 2 plus 4 is 6. We end up with 6 equals 2. That is not a true statement. If we substitute 5 in for x, we end up with square root of 16 plus 4 equals 5 plus 3, which gives us 8 equals 8. So our solution there is only 5. So very important when you have radical equations and logarithmic equations that you check your solutions, because as we saw there, you could end up with a superfluous solution where you get a solution, but it is not a, well, let me put it a different way. When you solve the equation, you do get a solution, but it is not a correct solution for the equation. All right, which of the following expressions is equivalent to f of x divided by g of x for x greater than 3? So now we're looking at function notation, dividing our functions, and that comes out to, so let's, if we factor that, that's x squared minus 9 divided by, we go ahead and factor that g of x, x minus 3, x plus 1. We can factor that numerator to x plus 3, x minus 3, all of that divided by x minus 3. Make sure you know how to factor x plus 1. Make sure you're very comfortable with factoring. These divide out, and we're left with x plus 3 divided by x plus 1. X plus 3, okay, so that's answer choice D. In the xy plane, the graph of the equation above is a circle. Point P is on the circle and has coordinates 10, -5. If PQ is a diameter of the circle, what are the coordinates of point Q? All right, so knowing our geometry of circle equations, terrible circle, I know. All right, and we have point P, so let's say 10, -5. Let's call that 10, -5 right there. That's a diameter, and we want to know what are the coordinates of point Q. That's not going to go through the center. Let's move our center. Oops, didn't mean to do all that. Okay. All right, and so our center is going to be, let's call it right there. Actually, as I read this, let's make a few changes here so we can match it up with what they give us. So looking at the equation of this circle, I see that my center is at 6, -5. So 6, -5, let's just put it right there. And it is saying point P has coordinates 10, -5. So that's 10, -5, which tells me right away that since this is a diameter, the other point, the coordinates of point Q is also going to have a -5, so we can eliminate those two. Now 6, -5, we already established that as our center. And that's 10, -5. Which means our point A has to be 2, -5. Or should I say, our point Q has to be option A, 2, -5. And a real quick check, knowing that the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. That means r has to equal 4. We have a radius of 4, since 4 squared is 16, which means our diameter has to equal 8. And if we look at what we have there with the 2, we're going to have 10 minus 2 squared, square root of 10 minus 2 squared. And I'm just not going to go any further with understanding that since both of our y coordinates are the same, the y difference is going to be 0, so that's just going to be plus 0. So then we end up with the square root of 8 squared, which is 8. From 10 to 2 is 8. Our diameter is 8. Okay. A group of 202 people went on an overnight camping trip, taking 60 tents with them. Some of the tents held 2 people each, and the rest held 4 people each. Assuming all the tents were filled to capacity and every person got to sleep in a tent, exactly how many of the tents were 2-person tents? What we have here is a system of two equations. All right, we have two types of tents. So we'll say x plus y are the two types of tents, and we had 60 of those, 60 tents. All right, and we'll say some of them held two people each. So we'll say x is the two-person tent. So two-person tents times the number of two-person tents plus, and then the rest held four people each. Four-person tent, and we don't know how many of those. And they all held all 202 people. And we want to know how many of the tents were two-person tents, so we want to solve for x. X is what we want to solve for, which means we want to eliminate y. So what I'll do is, let's go ahead and multiply this first equation by 4. And put that product down here. So we have 4x plus 4y equals 240. So system of two equations, by elimination, y has the same coefficient. And as I say, when I teach systems of equations by elimination, same sign subtract. So we're going to subtract these two equations because the variable with the same coefficient has the same sign. And that is going to give us negative 2x equals negative 38. Solving for x, negative 38, which means x equals 19 two-person tenths. If you wanted to check that, you could go ahead and put that back in and see that 2x, well, no, we have to solve for y, which means we have 19, we get 60, we have 41 four-person tenths. 41 times 4 is 164. 164 plus 38 is 202. Everything checks out. Which of the following could be the equation of the graph above? This one comes here with an understanding of zeros and our polynomials. We have to understand that wherever we cross the x-axis, that is a zero, a root, a solution, and we can write that as a factor. So each of these answer choices is the factor form of a polynomial. So that means since we're crossing at negative 3, that's a factor of x plus 3. So we can go ahead and eliminate C and D. It also crosses at positive 2, so that's a factor of x minus 2. X minus 2 is going to be a factor of this polynomial. So x minus 2, they both have x minus 2. And where it turns around, where it touches the x-axis and turns around, that is a multiplicity of 2, meaning we're squaring it. So that is x minus 0 squared, or just x squared. And so those are the three factors: x squared, x plus 3, x minus 2. Answer choice B. If 2a over b equals 1/2, what is the value of b over a? All right, this is kind of a number sense, general math type problem. Also understanding our fractions. And we can just look at the reciprocal. Since 2a over b equals 1/2, that means b over 2a equals 2 over 1. We don't want to know what b over 2a is. We want to know what is b over a. So we need to clear that fraction. Multiply both sides by 2. That clears the fraction, giving us b over a equals 2 over 1 times 2 is 4. Oil and gas production in a certain area dropped from 4 million barrels in 2000 to 1.9 million barrels in 2013. Assuming that the oil and gas production decreased at a constant rate, which of the following linear functions f best models the production in millions of barrels t years after the year 2000? Okay. So we're talking about y equals mx plus b, and or in this case, y equals mt plus b. Now, starting in 2000 with 4 million barrels, so our plus b is 4. So we got y equals something t plus 4. We went from 4 million barrels in 2000 to 1.9 million barrels in 2013. What we can go ahead and do now is, since it's a decrease our slope is negative, so we can eliminate the two positive slope options. And now we're talking about, let me see, we have barrels is a function of time. So that means we have 1.9. All right, let me back up one thing just real quickly. That means we're going to have time, year, and this is going to be our million barrels. Okay, so our number of barrels is a function of time. We're going from 4 million down to 1.9 from 2000 to 2013. I just want to show where everything is coming from. All right, so that means we're going to, our y2 is 1.9 minus our y1, 4, divided by x2 minus x1. Now 1.9 minus 4, that's a negative 2.1 divided by 13. We cannot have a fraction that has a decimal in it. So if we multiply numerator and denominator by 10 to clear that decimal, that gives us negative 21 over 130 for our slope, which is our answer choice C. All right, how many solutions are there to the system of equations above? There are, I guess, two different ways I want to look at this and approach this. First of all, what I want to do is rewrite that second equation as y equals 5x minus 8. Now what we have, our first one is a parabola. So let's just assume it's going to have something like this. The second one is a line. And a line can cross a parabola 2 times. So that tells us there are exactly 2 solutions. But another way we can see that is we have y equals x squared plus 3x minus 7. We also have y equals 5x minus 8. So one of the things we can do, since we have y by itself, is we can set them equal to each other so that we have x squared plus 3x minus 7 equals 5x minus 8. Which gives us x squared minus 2x, since when we subtract it, because when we have quadratics, we want to have it set equal to 0, so we subtract that 5x from each side, and then add that 8 on both sides, so negative 7 plus 8 is 1 equals 0. And so now solving for that, we have x minus 1 equals 0. Factor that out. So again, there are exactly 2 solutions. The functions g and h are defined above. What is the value of h of 0? All right, so this is understanding functions, composition of functions, operations with functions. So h of x is going to equal 1 minus, and g of x is 2x minus 1. So h of x, and actually let's put that in parentheses, we need to distribute that negative 1. So that comes out to be 1 minus 2x, or negative, well, 2 minus 2x. 2 minus 2x, or negative 2x plus 2, either way. So now h of 0 is just going to be 2. All right, so we have negative 2 times 0 plus 2 equals 2. And that is the end of our multiple choice. Now on to our free response. If A is a solution of the equation above and A is greater than 0, what is the value of A? So we have to pay attention to the wording here. All right, so we have a quadratic. We want to factor and solve that way. X squared plus x minus 12 means our 2 factors are going to be x plus 4 x minus 3, that equals 0. We know we're going to set each factor separately equal to 0, giving us x equals negative 4 and x equals 3, but it says a is greater than 0, which means a is our positive solution, which is 3. The sum of negative 2x squared plus x plus 31 and 3x squared plus 7x minus 8 can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are constants. What is the value of a plus b plus c? So we have to understand combining like terms, adding our polynomials. All right, so we want to add these two polynomials. We have negative 2x squared plus 3x squared, so that's x squared. Then we have x plus 7x, that's 8x. Then we have 31 plus negative 8 is 23. That means we have a is equal to 1, b is equal to 8, and c is equal to 23. So 1 plus 8 is 9, plus 23 is 32. If xy satisfies the system of equations above, what is the value of y? All right, so real simple here. All right, since we have x has the same coefficient, 1 in both cases, and the signs are different, said a little while ago, same sign subtract, different signs are going to add. So when we add these two equations together, x's sum to 0, they are eliminated. So we have 4y equals 6. Which means y equals 6/4 is 3/2, or 1.5. I have to grid in the 1.5 on this section here. Oops. A startup company opened with 8 employees. The company's growth plan assumes that 2 new employees will be hired each quarter every 3 months for the first 5 years. If an equation is written in the form y equals ax plus b to represent the number of employees, y, employed by the company x quarters after the company opened, what is the value of b? All right, so this is the first one where I say we really have to sift through all the wording to find out what is the math problem it's asking us here. And as we see there, y equals ax plus b. And what is b? Well, b is your value of y when x equals 0. And when x equals 0, that's when we're starting out, and we started with 8, so b equals 8. Our y-intercept is 8. In the circle above, point A is the center, and the length of arc BC is 2/5 of the circumference of the circle. What is the value of x? All right, and I love me some geometry. Okay, so understanding we have a central angle here. All right, the angle is at the center of the circle. That's the term central angle. And the ratio of the arc length to the circumference is going to be the same as the ratio of that angle to the full rotation of the circle, 360 degrees. So arc BC is 2/5 of the circumference. That's 40%. So we know BC is equal to 40% of 2 pi r, or the circumference. So that means that angle x degrees is 40% equals 40% of 360. Okay, I'm going to use a little bit of math trickery that might help you out here. We have a decimal and we have a pretty big number, 360. What we know is if I divide that 360 by 10, get rid of that 0, divide it by 10, all right, I have to also multiply that 0.4 times 10 so I do not change the value of my product. So I get rid of that 0 from the 360, and now I can move that decimal one place to the right. So instead of 0.4 times 360, I have 4 times 36, which is 144 degrees. All right? And that's it for this video.